Hey, it's Mr. Maldonado here. Alright, so we've already been talking about cells. We learned about them last year in 6th grade. We learned how cells are the building blocks of life, so it's the smallest unit of life. Every organism is made up of at least one cell. So we have unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. But now we're going to dive a little deeper in and talk about cell organelles. What is an organelle? Well, an organelle is a structure or a part in a cell that has a specialized function or job. So all cells are made up of many different things in there, and each one is important to ensure that the cell does what it has to do on a daily basis so that we can survive. So let's focus on this. We have two types of cells, eukaryotic and prokaryotic. So in this video we're going to focus on the organelles found in eukaryotic cells. So just as a reminder, for eukaryotic cells we have organisms that are members of the animal kingdom, the protista kingdom, the fungi kingdom, and the plant kingdom. So let's look at an animal cell. In an animal cell we have many different organelles. We're only going to cover some of them today. We're going to cover cell membrane, cytoplasm, nucleus, nuclear membrane, nucleolus, ribosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, smooth and rough, mitochondrion, vacuole, Golgi body, lysosomes, and centrosome. So let's get started. Alright, let's look at the cell membrane. So I have the cell membrane circled right over here. Now the cell membrane is kind of like a security guard. It regulates, it decides what's going to enter the cell and what's going to be able to leave the cell. So it surrounds it and it protects it. Next we have the cytoplasm, which is circled right over here. Now the cytoplasm holds all the organelles in the cell. Okay, it kind of holds them all together. So if you look at this jello right here, you see how the fruit's kind of just, it's stuck in there, it's being held together. Well, the cytoplasm is kind of like that jello. It kind of fills in all those spaces between all the organelles. It also contains enzymes that help to break down large molecules before the cell can eventually end up using them. So it's very important. Next we have the nucleus. This was one of the most important ones. The nucleus is right here. It's kind of like the brain or the command center of the cell. It controls the cell, and it also contains the DNA, which holds genetic information, which decides what color eyes you're going to have, how tall you'll be, what color hair you're going to have, and so on. So the nucleus is extremely important. Alright, this is like our brain. Our brain, how our brain controls what our body does and tells our body what to do. It sends those signals. Well, that's exactly what the nucleus does as well, but inside the cell. Nuclear membrane. Now, just the way the cell is protected by a cell membrane, the nucleus is also protected by what we call the nuclear membrane. It's also known as a nuclear envelope, and it surrounds the nucleus. So just like the cell membrane, it regulates what comes in and out and what comes out. So the nuclear membrane decides what's able to go in, what's able to come out, and it makes sure that all the DNA stays in there, right in place. The nucleolus, now this is like a sphere or round shape that's found inside the nucleus, and it contains something we call RNA and ribosomal protein. So this helps to make ribosomes, and right now you're not sure what ribosomes are, but we're going to get to that, so they're very important. Ribosomes. Alright, so ribosomes build proteins. Our body needs proteins to support biological processes. So think of a ribosome sort of like a construction worker, alright? So the construction worker, what he does here, he's putting together all these little amino acids, which are pretty much the little pieces that build proteins. So the construction worker kind of puts them all together and creates a protein, alright? So kind of like a protein shake, alright? So that's what the ribosome does. So it's very important because our body needs proteins on a daily basis to do its daily functions so that we can survive. Now we get into something known as the endoplasmic reticulum. We have two types. We have smooth endoplasmic reticulum and rough endoplasmic reticulum. So let's focus on what the endoplasmic reticulum does. The endoplasmic reticulum, also known as the ER, acts as a manufacturing and packaging system. Alright, so think of it kind of like a post office and like those postal trucks and mail trucks as they're going and delivering packages. That's kind of what the ER does. So the smooth ER stores lipids and steroids, which we'll talk about later on, but the rough ER, that's the one I want to focus on right now. So this one has ribosomes attached to it to help manufacture protein. So if you remember, ribosomes are like those little construction workers that help to put proteins together. Well, sometimes these ribosomes attach themselves to the rough ER. It then transports the protein to where it's needed. So it takes it and just, lets it float around somewhere in the cytoplasm for later use, or it sends it out of the cell because it needs to go to another part of the body. That's exactly what the smooth ER does. The rough ER does. So it's very important. So again, just like a post office, just like we rely on it to send our mail out to the rightful people where it needs to go to, or if you're paying a bill that it needs to go to the right company, well, that's exactly what the rough ER does. It sends the proteins exactly to where they need to be. Mitochondrion. This is one of my favorite ones just because I like the way it sounds. The mitochondrion acts, it's kind of like a digestive system. All right, it takes in nutrients, it breaks them down, and eventually it creates energy for the cell to carry out its daily functions. So just the way we eat food to get energy so that we can do what we need to do on a daily basis, the mitochondrion also takes in food, breaks it down, and produces that energy. All right, so whenever I think of mitochondrion, since it starts with the letter M and it produces energy, I think of Monster Energy Drink, since that also starts with the letter M. All right, so the mitochondrion produces the energy for the cell. It's kind of like the powerhouse of the cell. Vacuoles. All right, so vacuoles, I want you to think of a vacuole kind of like a gym bag. All right, so just the way, when you're putting together your gym bag, you put the clothes that you need, maybe you put a few protein bars in there, some other types of foods in there, maybe some fruit to help you stay energized all the day, maybe you put protein shakes in there, you put water in there to help you stay hydrated. Well, that's exactly what the vacuole does. All right, it stores the things the cell might need. All right, they even store waste for later removal so that it doesn't harm the cell. So later on it will remove the waste, but it does store it for a bit. So just the way sometimes, let's just say, you have a protein bar in your gym bag, you eat it and you don't want to litter around, you don't want to hurt the earth, so you kind of just store it in your gym bag until you get home and throw it away in the trash. That's what a vacuole does, all right? So just think of it like a gym bag. It stores all the necessary things that you need so that you can do what you have to do. The Golgi body. All right, so the Golgi body, also known as the Golgi complex or Golgi apparatus, is another packaging organelle. So kind of like the ER, how it packages stuff, the Golgi body does that too. So what the Golgi body does, it takes in these things called vesicles. So think of like a little bubble. It takes them in from the endoplasmic reticulum, and then it works on them. It adds to them and makes them a little bit more complex or bigger. Then finally, what it does, it either stores them so that, like what it already worked on, or it's going to release them in other vesicles. So remember those bubbles. So an example of one of those vesicles that it might release is a lysosome. All right, so again, it takes things in, it works on them, and then it packages them in those vesicles, and then it sends them out to wherever it needs to go. So we just mentioned that the Golgi body packages and sends out lysosomes, all right, little bubbles called lysosomes with important things in there. So I want you to think of lysosomes kind of like Pac-Man, all right? Lysosomes eat everything, all right? They work sort of also like a digestive system, kind of like the mitochondrion. So lysosomes have inside them digestive enzymes that help consume the food that the cell takes in. So when the ER, the endoplasmic reticulum, is working on something and it creates these little packages, in these packages it has digestive enzymes, all right? So it eats any kind of food that the cell starts to take in. There are times, however, that food becomes scarce. So when food is short in supply, it'll actually start to eat, the lysosomes will actually start to eat other organelles in the cell to get the energy that the cell needs so that it can carry out its functions so that we can survive and do what we have to do as human beings. The last one that we're going to talk about from the animal cell is known as the centrosome. Now, we're going to talk more in detail about this later on, probably maybe more in 8th grade, definitely when you get to biology in high school. But the centrosome is an organelle that's near the nucleus. So when the time comes for the cell to actually divide, okay, because, just so we said that, for example, you have a skin cell, it dies, and then, skin cells start to replicate, they make more, so obviously you don't run out of skin. So that's when the cell divides. So when that happens, then we use what the organelle called the centrosome. So the centrosome, what it does, it produces these things called centrioles, and these help or aid in cell division, right? They help the cell divide and do what it has to do. But again, we'll get into more detail with that later on. Now let's move on to a plant cell. So the only differences between a plant and animal cell is that the plant cell contains the cell wall, which the animal cell doesn't. Plant cells also contain chloroplasts, which animal cells do not. And plant cells contain what we call a central vacuole. So instead of many little vacuoles, it contains a central vacuole. So let's look at these three in detail now. All right, So the cell wall protects everything within the cell membrane, all right? So just like an animal cell has a cell membrane, so does the plant cell, but in addition to the cell membrane, around it, you have the cell wall. So the cell wall helps to give the plant cell support and protection, all right? So think of it kind of like the Great Wall of China, how it was built to protect them from invading Mongolians. Well, that's exactly what the cell wall does, all right? It protects it and it gives it support. The chloroplast. Now this is something that we've already talked about this year when we talked about photosynthesis in detail. The chloroplast, think of it kind of like the kitchen of the plant cell, all right? It's the one that transforms the radiant energy from the sun into glucose for the plant to get the energy. All right, so that's exactly what the chloroplast does. It's just a kitchen where it cooks up what it needs to do and it gets the food that it needs. It's glucose. The last one that this plant cell has that the animal cell doesn't is what we call the central vacuole. So unlike animal cells, plants only have one large central vacuole, not many little ones. So his vacuole takes in water and fills up to help support the plant and keep it from wilting. So when it kind of starts to fall over, when it starts to die out. So this is where Tugger pressure plays a part. So we learned about Tugger pressure this year also. That force, when the plant takes in the water to help it stand up nice and straight. Well, that's exactly what the central vacuole helps the plant do. It fills up with the water and it helps those cells stand up straight to give the plant the structure that it needs. Alright, so thanks for watching. We'll get more into cell organelles in more detail later on.